Bibles to show up, let me go through my standard GDPR statement of this is being recorded, this session, and the result will be put up on YouTube. So if anyone would prefer they're not on YouTube, please turn off your camera now. Those of you who've yet to have your 15 minutes of fame, this is the opportunity you've all been waiting for. So let me go ahead and start the ball rolling. So good afternoon to you all. Thank you for coming. Today's presentation is linked in many ways to the pilot that Great Collaboration is going to be starting in May in East Anglia, where we are looking to ask councils just what sort of information they would really like to have pointers to. So those of you who know that Great Collaboration is looking to make life easier for all those councils working on climate and the environment, we're going to be asking a whole bunch of councils from county down to district, down to town and to parish level, what it is that they're really seeking, just to make sure that we're on the same wavelength as they are. And a large part of that exercise will be the gathering of data and putting it onto a map. And we're getting a lot of help for that from Geoxphere, the company that make Parish Online. And Chris Mewse, their CEO, is going to enthrall us today with the stories of how they do that. So without any more ado, Chris, let me hand it over to you and leave you with us. And there will be a time for questions and answers at the end. And if you have any questions in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, please stick them in the chat so we can go through them one by one. Thank you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Let me just sort out my screen share. And just let me know when that comes through for you all.
Yep, visible.
Very lovely. So I was going to do a bit of a demo of the software, but I figured actually it's best to sort of set the scene for what we do as a company to start off with. And then maybe if we get into the Q&A and there's stuff that's relevant, we can show in the actual software. But yes, it's myself and Tristram's on the call as well today, who also works with us. And this is talking about our product, Parish Online. We've been going since about 2008. It started with our mapping software itself, and we started it off to get mapping to town and parish councils. I'll comment on that in a sec. Brief history is we became independent from the company that we were working in 2016, and last year we converted to be a not-for-profit CIC. So that's just the development and the natural progression that we've gone for working in public sector and working with high social value projects. So the main aim of the product suite is to empower local councils with really great technology. So we are map geeks at heart, but we're also general nerds, so we can help in other areas of life as well. So we take that expertise and we convert those complex software and IT principles into easy to understand services, and that's really where the values come from our product. And you can see with the smattering of green on the map, we've got quite a big customer base now. So the mapping software, as an overview, it's giving you access to highly detailed mapping, and it allows you to view the mapping, draw your own mapping on top of it, and then do analysis and plans on top as well. So it's a bit of a jack of all trades because we're bringing in lots of different sources of information, and depending on what your interests are at the time, you can find information that's useful for you. The sort of inception for this was very back when we looked at it, and we deal with what's called GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And we were working with the counties and the districts, and they just completely understood how useful digital mapping was. And when we started communicating with the parishes, they were like, sorry, what are you on about? Hadn't got a clue, didn't have access to the data. So we thought, okay, there's something to be fixed there. And that was one of the sort of core reasons for developing the Parish Online mapping product. And one of the key things was also very simple stuff to our mind, but it's actually not completely obvious. So it was a parish council knowing where their boundaries were. And if you've ever looked at parish council boundaries, they're bonkers. Do go and have a play around. They're completely nuts. So you get silly things like this. You get funny old slithers going off. You get boundaries where they're defined by old geographical features. So, that bit of river isn't there anymore, but the boundary still is. And if you're in Somerset, as Graham will attest, they're just completely nuts. So trying to understand your parish boundary as a very simple thing is a bit of a challenge. And so a map is a very easy way of fixing that. So showing those parish boundaries on a map let you know what you're responsible for. But the then moved on to not just so simple things like that, but it was really getting finding use for the software in the day-to-day life of town and parish councils. And one of the key things was continuity between clerks. So as clerks come and go, information can go as well, unless it's recorded properly. So parishes have been using Parish Online to store that information and information that was in their heads onto the map. And so it's there for each successive clerk. And that's been really important for not only just the efficiency of parish councils, but what they can actually do on a day-to-day basis as well. And that naturally led on to asset management. So parishes keeping on top of their maintenance and inspection records, plotting onto the map where their stuff is. And again, that helps with the brain drain issue, where if it's in Parish Online on a map, then it can go from clerk and councillor as they all come and go. And Parish Online has also been used for more strategic plans as well. So neighbourhood planning is a huge one of these, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of neighbourhood plans built within Parish Online. And it's a really key drafting tool. So we use the term "a picture paints 1,000 words" for it, and that really is what happens with drafting up a neighbourhood plan. You can plot out the areas, and when you go to consultation with the public, they know what you're on about. You don't have to explain in 1,000 words which field you're talking about or which roundabout you're talking about. It's there on a map and it's more easy to understand. And then some day-to-day uses. Parish Online has printing and measurement tools. It can also export interactive maps, so you can publish information to your own website. And that just makes it a lot more engaging. So it's not just a siloed piece of information for the parish, it's there to be shared out to the wider public. And going back to one of the concepts that we have with this, going back to the silly slide earlier, we know that those higher tier authorities have a lot of information that would be useful for the town and parish councils as well. So as well as keeping the software and the data up to date in Parish Online, we also engage with the higher tier authorities to lobby them to share their data with us so that they can share it once and we can share it out to all of the parishes within their territory. And also engaging with them to say, well, these parishes have better local knowledge than you, whether you like it or not. But they don't have the ability to share that information up. So using Parish Online as a platform for information sharing has been really popular and saves a lot of time with the different tiers of councils. So we got local authorities sharing down things like traffic regulation orders, TPOs, planning data, whatever we can get from them to put into Parish Online, so that instead of each individual parish is having to ask for it, one update can happen and all the parishes in their area can switch on that information and see it without having to engage with anyone. And that's again improving day by day as we engage with more higher tier authorities, even central government as well, to try and get this information flowing a lot better. And doing that led us on to more collaborative mapping. So this is a shot of all of the defibrillators that parishes plot into Parish Online. Now, I appreciate that there's the circuit, and that's used for logging the locations of the defibrillators for emergency situations. This is not for that. This is for plotting them as an asset in terms of keeping them maintained and in good working order, but also looking at where they are as well. So we have many parishes who plot out where they have defibrillators and then try and look at where there's not spots in their area. Particularly in residential areas, we're seeing that there's a big campaign now to bring defibrillators into residential areas where people are having heart attacks. That's a general statement, but you know what I mean. So what we did with this is we knew that the locations of defibrillators weren't contentious, they weren't secret. So what we did is instead of each parish plotting their own defibrillator and it staying in their own account for only them to view, we decided to share it out, make that layer a collaborative layer. So that database of information was actually shared across all parishes. So when they switch that defibrillator on, they see all of theirs, but then they also see everyone else's. And you'll see it's a bit of a patchwork here. So, we don't have complete coverage. It's only the parishes who are actively using it for plotting that. But you can certainly see clusters, and that really helps with the what we call the spatial analysis. So looking at where there are and are not defibrillators and where ones perhaps should go. And we're extending this concept of collaborative mapping now. So this is starting to get into the Venn diagram of working with great collaboration. But we're capturing and plotting information on the map to basically make it come alive, make the data more useful, intuitive, visually appealing, and engaging. And we know from our sort of mapping background that plotting stuff on the map can realize a lot of really interesting analysis, and you can look at clusters of things that are happening. This is a very early example of a map we're building up at the moment, and it's plotting the domain names that parishes use for their organization. So the green ones are parishes who use gov.uk, and then you've got org.uk in blue, .com in pink. And this is not a complete map, so we haven't built up this picture completely. This is an early edition of it that I've taken, but this will allow us to see clusters of where there are and are not councils using gov.uk's, which will be useful for someone. It will be useful for it could be useful for a clerk who's trying to persuade their councillors that they need to move to gov.uk and saying, well, look, everyone else around us already has. Maybe this one in these blue ones in the centre. Maybe we are at odds with the general consensus and looking at things in a wider picture. So that's really what we want to do here with this collaborative mapping, is capture information from the parishes, either contributed by themselves or brought together from different resources, but allowing them to contribute it and then looking at that information in a wider context. And then this brings us on a bit further to our own thought leadership as a company. So we've changed our mindset a lot from going, well, we're just the software providers. We get told what to add in by our customers, and off we go. And that's fine, but because we have over 2,000 subscribers to our software, we do get a sense of what's happening on a national scale. So we can take that, analyze it, and then start to impress upon our customers what's happening in a wider context. Now, the mapping is going to help with that, but it's also in the projects and the schemes that we engage in as a company. And I think this is really important because councils sit quite in an isolated way. Whether you talk about it from an organisation level or even down to an individual clerk, it is an isolating job. And knowing you're doing something correct in the wider context is actually quite hard. So this is perhaps something we can help with. Um, so we've also been bringing in other data sets that can help, and climate change, climate awareness, climate action is certainly one thing where we've seen a lot of parishes go round in circles about because they think they need to reinvent a wheel, or they don't know the wheel exists, or they just feel that they're particularly different, so need to do things in a different way. And so what we've been doing is saying, well, we know there's data out there that could be useful for you to benchmark particular things and analyze your area in a particular way. And so we've been bringing that data in. One of these examples is energy performance certificates. So one thing that we can do to help with uh, getting parishes more energy aware is visualizing the energy consumption and the property performance of houses in their towns and villages. So this is a map which is showing the like you get on the back of a fridge, that color grading. It's doing that for energy performance certificates for properties. And you can immediately see where there's little clusters of badly performing houses and areas of good performing houses. So this might be a new housing estate that's recently been assessed and been given A's and B's. And you can see that erode over time as the uh, what am I saying? As the reassessments come through, so every 10 years or so, or whenever it gets reassessed, you'll see that B change to a D or the D change to an A, or whatever it is, and we can visualize that difference. And actually, we do that as part of our database analysis. So we show the properties that are getting better and are getting worse, and even ones that have got invalid or old energy performance certificates now. And we'd also, it's not just mapping as well. So we're actually bringing in the information associated with each of those records. So these are all clickable points, and you'll be able to then look at the information that's hidden within those EPCs. And they're really fascinating documents because they not only have the current state of play for a property, but it also has recommendations in it. So it's going whether it's conducive to taking it's a certain percentage of light bulb, the LED light bulbs it's got, or the insulation or whatever it is. It's got information and guidance within it. So that could be really helpful. And it's not just energy. So we're looking at biodiversity as well. And so these are data sets that we're bringing in to help parishes in a collaborative way plot their biodiversity corridors and areas they have and areas they want. So they can draft up new corridor areas, then show it, okay, that means we need to do a certain amount of planting in this area, or we need to change the way pathways work to avoid disruption, or whether it's bridges over roads or whatever it is. Prompting a parish with that thought leadership, with that communication to say, did you know you could use mapping to do this? Is a really powerful thing. And every time we put something into our newsletter and say, well, we've been requested or we've decided to add new data into Parish Online, we share about it, and it gets loads of responses, and it's really good, and it gets picked up and it starts to be used. That shows that the mapping is a powerful way of doing this. And then very recently, we've been adding in more data that's coming in from a national basis on a very similar line. So this is field boundaries and land use types visualized as well. I haven't gone into all the different styling connotations for it, but visualizing whether you've got wooded areas or tree canopy or hedgerows or walled areas helps you visualize whether there's going to be problems with animal I was going to say migrations, but that's a slightly more grand way of going across a village. But you know what I mean. Making sure that we are not creating man-made obstructions for things, and where we can help. There's also the there's flooding data, and we've got flooding data from Environment Agency, and then this data, which is showing the water network and the way water is flowing, which is obviously not visible on a map normally. But this is really important stuff because we're going to get more extreme weather events, we're going to get more issues, and so planning and attempting to mitigate those is a really important factor. So bringing the data, putting it on a plate for the parish to say, here you go, here's some information, use it as you like, but here it is in the first place to help provoke that conversation. And there's even more so, again, recently we've been adding in tree canopy data and woodland opportunity data from Friends of the Earth. So this is analysing the country to say, well, here's where tree canopy currently is, and here's where you've got land that would be conducive to taking woodland. And now it's not a complete binary thing, as this map is showing. Maps like to show quite binary things. But it's giving you an indication of where it might be good, and then for you to do some further analysis. So this could be good for um, uh, bridging the gap, back to biodiversity corridors, or it could be big areas of woodland, whether that's managed woodland or whatever it is. But again, just more data on a plate so that a parish has more evidence and more data to work on. And we're taking this even further. So linked back to those maps, sort of looking about the gov.uk ones, we are looking at how we capture information from the parishes as well. So not just making them have to edit a map or add information onto a map, giving them just normal text-based questions, little survey questions, allowing them to easily update the information that's stored for their parish area. And then we do all the fun stuff behind the scenes to then visualize that and turn it into a map that then allows them to see it on a wider scale. And I really think that this is a new scheme that we're bringing out over the next few months, but this will really help visualize and help us understand the state of play in parishes for who has declared climate emergencies and what the general consensus is on setting net zero target dates or and when those are, among many other questions that we're going to be asking. But just helping the parish submit information in that structured way so that we can then map it in a structured way will then return more from that piece of work. And as a company, we are sort of dedicated to climate action. So we are working with partners to guide parishes through creating these baselines and targets. It's very well saying, yes, we've declared a climate emergency. Now what? There's not really anything you can, there's no standard way of doing this. So first of all, we've been working with great collaboration to look at, okay, what other things do we need to be capturing to help parishes set these baselines? So that we can create quantitative values. So as an example, you could plot the number of properties in your parish that have EV chargers, for example, so home EV chargers. Okay, that is X% of all residential properties in the village. Great, okay. Can we set a target to get it to X% or Y%, whatever it is? Finding those numbers, I think, really helps to set something and allow it to be pushed forward. Otherwise, you'll say, yes, we declared a climate emergency. Yeah, we planted a tree the other day, so that was really good. And there's no real push for it. So as data nerds, as I said at the top, this is something we're interested in. Data, numbers, maps, visualizations of it allow you to, first of all, quantify what's going on, share that information, and then make plans and targets for it. And so again, working with great collaboration, we're going to be looking at that data collection from residents and community groups as well as parishes, and then spreading that information and that mapping wider than the little world of parish councils. So that's really what we're working on at the moment. So that's quite exciting. I appreciate this bit of death by PowerPoint, but it's useful to share the concepts that we're working on at the moment, and knowing that there's a lot of mapping going on behind the scenes and a lot of database work. So I wanted to clear that in probably just half an hour or so, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them now, and I'll stop sharing so I can see you all again.
Chris, thank you so much. That was very enlightening, even to those of us who are quite used to your product. So that was great. And the first question has already come up. So let's ask Leah if you'd like to unmute and ask your question, please. And there are a couple in chat as well, which we'd like to get to. So Leah, you're first up.
Thanks. Yeah, I work at the Centre for Sustainable Energy, and we do a lot of climate action support for town and parish councils. And I was wondering, you mentioned about like if they wanted to map out how many EV chargers they were in an area and then do a project to increase them. How often do you update the data in terms of them then being able to track how their campaign or project, like how quickly can they see whether it's having results?
Yeah, so we would it would what we again, we haven't fully published all of this yet, but our intention is to have this so that they can plot, go around and map all the ones that they know of, and that will then summarize it with a percentage, and then they can decide where that baseline starts and then where they go to, how long they want to monitor that for. But every time they plot something onto it, that number will change. It's just going to be a calculation. So it can be quite a live and dynamic thing, really. And I think that's quite important because if you say, oh, well, we want 20% more charges by 2030, great. What do? Just wait until 2030 and then check the numbers again? I don't know about you, but I like if it's like looking at interest on my 50p that I've got in my savings account. I want to see it every day. I want to see that change. And I think that will create that energy around it. So yeah, I think it'll be a very dynamic thing and see that adapt over time. And just on CSE, we've got the impact tool connected into Parish Online. So when you click on a parish area, it will fire off into the impact assessment tool, which has been great. And we've had to constantly tell people it's not ours, it's it's CSE's. But that's been really powerful again for setting baselines, looking at the percentage of energy consumed by parish areas.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Peter, would you like to be next, please?
Yeah, please. Chris, that's fantastic. As I said in the chat, I've just become chair of the East Cambridgeshire Climate Action Network, and I'm actually doing a very short presentation on Parish Online in a couple of weeks' time. And I've been rapidly taking screenshots of some of your examples, which is fantastic. I guess my question is, how can I get involved in this? We are in East Anglia. And I'm also a geographer, and I've actually got in Cambridgeshire we actually have Cambridgeshire and Peterborough we have 4 tiers: parish, district, county council, and combined authority, and I have contacts in all of them.
You're very lucky to have 4 tiers. Not everyone can have 4. Everyone with those combined authorities. Sorry, I'm being flippant. So the first phase that we've got is we are going to be deploying this for our parish customers to start off with. I would say use them as guinea pigs, but basically we're going to use them to start collecting some of that information and bringing it together. The second phase to that is widening it out to the great collaboration groups, so getting them to be able to plot things as well. But working with county associations as well, we'd like to be able to see them capturing information. And yeah, so we've just got this phased approach where we want to start off as a small pilot for it and then bring it out to great collaboration and then wider and wider. So to answer your question, if you've got contacts with parish councils at the moment, then pointing them in the direction of Parish Online would be a good start. That's not me with a sales hat on. It's just that you can do a free trial for it and play around with it once we've got that scheme running, and there'll be no financial burden on the parish, and that will allow them to plot information and get that feedback loop in the mapping. So yeah, that'll be the first phase.
And in answer to your question,
by email.
So in
absolutely.
answer to your question about how do you get involved in the pilot, I've made a note of your need and would be in touch with you.
Okay, yep, that's great. The event I've got, which is going to involve a large number of the parishes and the communities, is on the 15th of May. So please do come back to me rapidly.
We'll be,
Well, no pressure then, please.
We'll be, yes, exactly. No problem at all. Stuart, it's your next, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Chris for a fantastic presentation, and I have actually learned quite a bit more about Parish Online. You highlight the problem of actually getting the data from county council, district council down to parish level. Following one of Graham's ideas, I wanted to get the street lights onto Parish Online so I could see where there might be useful street lights for EV charging points.
Yep.
And I thought I'd really achieved something because I did get the street lights into Parish Online. But they are just black dots. If I go onto Essex Highways website and search that for street lights, you click on it and it comes up with a number, tells you whether it's working or not, and there's all sorts of information. So all I received after quite a bit of effort to try and get the data was black dots.
Yeah, okay,
I've also been trying to get planning applications from our district council, and I've completely drawn a blank there. I think the other big problem is that certainly in my council, there seems to be quite a shortage of officers to actually do any work. They all seem to be exceedingly busy. I've tried to persuade them to have a look at Parish Online. One of them had been plotting out the grass cutting regime to go out to tender. And I said, why don't you put it all in Parish Online? It'd be great. You could then share it and update it annually or whatever. Do the job once, it's done. But nobody seems to have the time to sit down and actually look at the Parish Online, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, to answer those two questions, so first of all, on the black blobs that are coming through instead of the feature-rich data, that should be there if we've been, I don't know exact example, but it is possible to bring that information in, so and visualize it and color it up for different themes or types or grades of streetlights. So that's all doable. So it'd be interesting to take a look at that. We've our support. If you use our support mailbox, you can find it on our website. Send me that issue and we can investigate it and try and sort it out.
Okay.
But in terms of timing, yes, it is an issue. Trying to get the higher tier authorities to understand that a little bit of invested energy actually pays off a lot more in the long run. And we do a lot of this at our own cost for free for the higher tier councils in order to make it happen. As soon as we put any kind of pricing or time barriers in front of them, then it melts away very quickly. So we say, look, you don't have to do anything, just give us the data and we'll sort it out. And so that's what we spend our time behind the scenes doing as well.
Can I just add to that, Stuart? The problem of getting data from district councils is everybody has it. And I think there's a reluctance for the districts and counties to allow parishes to understand the data. They feel they lose power. So if you could tell us, it's very useful if you get blocked for us to know that, because we can maybe help you release the pressure and get councils to provide data.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be good to help and try and get that sorted for you.
Thanks.
Jackie, good afternoon. It wouldn't be a bad session without you contributing, so now's your opportunity.
Okay, you say that you're hoping to get some information on community groups. I'd like to know a little bit more about that, and what for Warwickshire. So Nick, who's also on the call, and myself have been involved with mapping the community groups that are active on climate change and biodiversity in Warwickshire, and we've got 37 groups. I was also energy manager at Warwickshire County Council for 20 years, so I know all the people at the County Council. I'm on Stratford District Council's climate and environment sort of local climate engagement programme, and I'm also on Napton Parish Council's Climate and Environment Working Group. So you're saying there's problems getting data. What sort of data would you like to see for Warwickshire, and what information on community groups? And I'll see if I can start getting that data.
Well, first of all, Jackie, I'd question your credentials on climate. You don't seem to have anything, you don't seem to be involved in it at all, do you? But that's great that you are. So I've kind of deferred that question a little bit to the Great Collaboration team, because
Okay.
I'd like them to input some what they want captured more. And there's always a big long list of it, but it's finding the right things to get started with. But we're really flexible with it, so in a cheesy way, we can map anything. So what you're interested in that you think will be useful, let's see if we can get some structured questions for it that we can then get out to community groups and get collected in. Graham, do you want to add anything on that?
I do, but I don't think it's what Jackie is really going to want to hear. So there are counties around the country, Jackie, that are famous for being very positive about getting data out to their parishes. And then there are those in between, and then there are those at the bottom of the list. And the example always given for the bottom of the list is Warwickshire.
All right, let's see if we can change it then.
Exactly. So, no, what I'm going on to say, I'm delighted to hear you say you'd love to help us get data into the system. And there are occasions when I've been asked, what information is it that you want? And the answer has always been all of it, because I use as the example Bath and North East Somerset, which is a unitary, and there they put out 400 layers of data all the time to their parishes. And when you ask the head of the GIS department, so which one is the most popular, he said the ones that I least expect anybody to use. There's always somebody at the parish level who finds something absolutely fascinating that nobody else wants. But the typical ones, everyone is desperate to know where the footpaths are when they're updated. So the public right of way is a strong one. The ones that people have mentioned about highway lighting and anything to do with highways is hugely popular. And to do with climate, all the stuff that you're doing with those energy groups sounds absolutely fascinating and very, very mappable. So I'd love to set up a separate conversation with you and with our people who are going around with this pilot, asking the questions and seeing if we can get your input into that. And then we'll bring the pilot into line with some of your thoughts.
Okay.
But we're all sort of headbutting at the moment with Warwickshire County Council, because apparently it's illegal under their terms to export any data to anybody.
Right, okay.
So now we're going to get a strong rebuttal from Nick.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, please invite me along to that if you're setting something up with Jackie, because I'd love to be part and play part. I'm North Warwickshire, Jackie is South, so together we can do it, Jackie, can't we?
Or maybe you can reverse the impression that Warwickshire gives to the rest of us.
Oh, I'm saddened to hear that. Just one thing I was going to say, I put in the chat earlier on, because one of the things I do in my parish is I'm part of our Pathways group, but I became aware recently of Slow Ways, which is a group, an organisation. I don't know, Chris, whether you've seen it before, but they're trying to map all walking routes nationally. So I put a link to that in there in case that's something you've not come across before.
Yeah, we've looked at the Slowways stuff before as that project. The data's not available or accessible to share or bring into anywhere apart from that application at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. We have a similar thing with some of the Ramblers data that because it was connected with Slowways, where it seems to be a bit of a closed shop with it. So yeah, if you can find someone within there who would be happy to get that data shared out and used more widely, then yeah, I'd be happy to help.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any person. I'm just on the mailing list, but I'll make some inquiries. Yeah, great stuff.
So let me I'm going to go through the chat list to see if we've left any questions unanswered, although I think Trista is doing wonderful jobs for answering some of the questions. Let's go down, nothing above there.
Graham, while we're looking at that, I just wanted to observe to Jackie. Jackie asked us what information we wanted to map. But I think that it needs to come very much the other way if possible. So we're trying to respond to the requirements of individual parishes and districts, and we would like to help you map what you want to map. So don't. I think the message for me is don't rely on us to tell you what to map.
Okay.
We need to hear it from you too.
Which is a great point. Yes, thank you. I did have a question for the business of the EPC data. So there was a question, Chris, I don't know if you've seen it yet, that is the EPC data nationally, to which the answer is yes. And to which my point would be, I know you get that data from government sources, but going back to your principle of the parishes know what's really going on, would you consider an update from parishes about more recent changes? Because some of that data is fairly old that you're showing. Not your fault, but the government maybe.
Yes, I wouldn't want to contaminate that particular data set as a crowdsourced data set, but certainly capturing other factors about individual properties is definitely something we've got in the works as part of this scheme at the moment. So being able to plot updates to that as a separate layer is going to happen in this project.
Okay.
But yeah, so being able to sort of and similar to the EV example, so being able to plot around the village, you can see who's got car chargers stuck to the house. So being able to plot those is going to be easy. But then engaging with the community to say, okay, well, who's got a heat pump? Like I'm in a little village here, and I actually know that 2 doors down there's a very old house with and they converted to use it for a heat pump, and it works really well, which is counter to everything you hear in the Daily Mail about, it's not going to work in that particular house, and they're doomed, and EVs just explode. So we see contrary evidence to that. So being able to plot that kind of information so that you can create some good news stories and create some advocates for clean energy stuff in your village is a really good starting point. Because from a parish point of view, they're as a council, you can only do so much. You can inform residents, but really it comes down to community will. So if you see someone putting solar panels on their house, you naturally want to talk to them if you're interested about it, because they just live around the corner from you, rather than a national body. So I feel that's really important to plot that information as well.
Yes, I think one of the major points of the great collaboration is that when councils start going down a new road, they'd like to know who around them is doing the same thing, so they can share ideas with local people rather than somebody at the far end of the government line. So one of the things I'm sure we'll be coming up with in the pilot study is that we want to know where heat pumps are. I mean, our village hall put air-driven heat pumps in a couple of years ago, and the difference has been mind-boggling in the lower utility bills and the much greater appreciation from the villagers when we can have both air conditioning in the summer with all this new heat that we're getting, as well as the regular heat coming on in the mornings before the first Pilates session gets going. The temperature is all brought to pump. So the heat pumps have been great. Let me go on to questions. We've got another one from Jane.
Hi, yes, thank you. Chris, I'm in Dorset, and we've got quite a lot of resistance from Dorset Council to share layers with us. We haven't gone for Parish Online for that very reason. Is there still a good argument for having Parish Online without those layers? Because I'm finding it I'm on the Climate Change Action Group. We're in a very large village, so if we are doing everything manually ourselves, it's a lot of work, and it would need to be done by volunteers because the staff at our council are fully employed. Can you help with any sort of good reasons that we should still be pushing for Parish Online?
Yes, you're right. Dorset is an odd one compared to the rest of the country.
There are other people in Dorset who are already using it that we could talk to.
Yes, there's lots actually. So it's been used a lot primarily for neighbourhood planning rather than anything else. So yes, it's got we've got quite a lot of members. I'd be happy to sort of share some offline of who's used it previously. And not all areas have this extra data coming down from the higher tier authorities, and Parish Online is used as a perfectly useful tool without that data as well. It's just an extra icing on the, it's a cherry on the cake really for using Parish Online as a product. So I wouldn't say it's a binary thing. Like if you don't have data from Dorset, then you shouldn't use Parish Online. It's quite the opposite. It's a very useful tool anyway. We'd love to engage with Dorset for getting out data sharing. It's mostly down to the investment that they've put in internally for how they, instead of, no, I'm not going to speak about it too much, but they invested in something, therefore they have to follow through with it really, and that doesn't really allow for sharing beyond their little system.
Yeah, exactly. We've got Dorset Explorer, but that doesn't allow us to actually add anything manually to that ourselves.
No. In terms of the capture, so in the first phase, this is going to be internal for parishes to plot information. But as I said, as we widen this out, as long as we can do it in a controlled way without it becoming a sort of free-for-all, because we're looking at high quality data with verified, not necessarily verified people, but verified organizations and groups, then it'll allow communities to start plotting out information or contributing their own information to it as well. I think that could work really nicely.
And Jane, I don't know if you know, but there are hundreds of national data sets in Parish Online without the district data. So those will allow you to make neighbourhood plans and build plans. So I think it's well worth exploring. And you can, as Chris said before, you can take out a free trial for Parish Online, so you can have a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty convinced anyway. I mean, there is the extra problem of cost. With the insurance, where you can get a 3 years worth of Parish Online with the council insurance, is that an automatic thing, or do you have to apply for it when you do the insurance?
You apply for it through through Clear Council's insurance. They'll be able to sort it out, and then we create the account for you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But if they've already gone ahead and actually renewed for the year, and
you can message them and they can put you onto the list.
Put you onto it. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
That's all right. If we can make the few quick fire, because I've got to go and pick up my boy from preschool in a few minutes, if that's all right.
Can we
I have to take some quick fire ones.
Oh, a very quick one. I'm very keen on heat pumps, and I heat this house with a heat pump. There is a website, heatpumpmonitor.org, where people with heat pumps volunteer to have neighbours come along and have a look. So some of that data is already out there.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay for that.
And sorry, moving on to Jackie.
Mine was just a quick one on heat pumps as well. It was for Graham. It was that I've been doing thermal imaging surveys in the village, and I've been looking at people's heat pumps, and I'm frequently coming up with, even though they've got like insulation around the pipes between the heat pump and the house, like this thick, they're still 15 degrees hotter than the environment. So if you're doing heat pumps, make sure you've got even more insulation than you think you need.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you. If Chris has got to run away, let me ask quickly if there's anybody else with any last minute questions.
I can take any questions. If Chris has to go.
Yes, that's true. Well, the only one I have that's of general interest to anybody is I'd really love to know whether anybody anywhere has ever charged a council that isn't giving out data easily with their legal obligation to do so. Because there is legislation, isn't there, in place that says they must share the data, the public data that they've got, in a way that is most helpful to the users. And the
great way of making friends, Graham.
I know, I'm just looking to see if there's an example that you can throw at people. So this is the nuclear option, guys.
We try not to do
that. I know, but I'd love to find somebody.
You can do it on our behalf. That's a great idea.
All right. Well, look, I'd like to say thank you all for your time and for coming. For those of you who have no further questions, we're happy to end this. For those of you who do have further questions, please stay on. But Chris, if you need to run, thank you so much for your very energetic performance. It was lovely to see you and new ideas coming through.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Cheerio.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So we've got questions from Peter.
Well, my hand was clapping just then, but
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Misinterpreted the sign.
yeah, I mean, I just made some points about the about EPCs because I actually I'm qualified to do them. It's one of my many daytime jobs. But there is a big problem. You know, EPCs at some stage will hopefully may change, and you may have to be done every 5 years, or may have to be done with when there's been a significant improvement to the domestic property, or even the non-domestic property. But unfortunately, things are moving very, very slowly with government on that line at this present moment. So we'll have to see what happens in the next 12 months.
I imagine that everybody on the call is aware that an EPC has to be drawn up every time a house is sold nowadays. But it's that information which seems to take a long time to filter through to us in Parish Online. I'm hoping that will.
Yeah, which is a bit. It depends upon how I would have thought. It depends upon how quickly the Parish Online actually kind of pulls data from whatever part of the government website it does it.
Yeah,
because when a surveyor goes out
every couple of years,
it put every couple of years.
Well,
Parish Online pulls it across.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we keep the difference. We also keep the old data so that you can see the change.
Yeah.
Is there a specific reason why it's every 2 years, Tristram? I mean, you think this is the sort of information you'd want to change monthly?
Yeah, I don't think they update the database monthly.
Well, what the point I'm making is the government website. If you do a search on EPCs and get to the government website, you've got all the live EPCs there. Now, they're not in a format, they are publicly available, and they're up to date at the point on the day in which they were done. The problem I made is that some of them could be up to 10 years or even older, because you need an EPC if you're selling a property. You need an EPC, and it has to be an E-rated EPC if you are if it's a private rented property as well. Yeah. But I would have thought it would be possible. It may be a resource issue. I don't know. To easily pull that data from wherever the government website is, the raw data, I mean, not what is publicly available. And you could do that on a regular basis to get a better indication, whether it be 3 months, whether it be 2 months or 1 month, well, that's something you need to decision.
Well, I may be out of date. I may have given you bum information, but my understanding was that the database available to the public wasn't updated on a continuous basis. If it is, then I think we can pull the data. I mean,
for example, I'm going to go out and do an EPC this afternoon.
Right.
So I do the survey, and then I could be lodging it later this evening, and it then will appear live on the government website for the householder and anybody else to actually look at it. So it is live to the points in which the survey was done. And on the point it was lodged there. Now, what I guess that Parish Online are doing is pulling out the raw data, which is available to research organisations. You've got to get proof you're doing it for research purposes, whatever, and I'm sure some agreement has been made there. But that live data, the raw data, I don't know how often that is updated. Well, it should be updated in real time, I would have thought, but how easy it is to pull it on a regular basis is a different matter, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think on the whole, I think it would be easy. So we should look at that. The only other thing I'd say is that it's quite useful to have an annual or a biannual cut of the data, because then you can look at statistically how things are changing. So you could say, for a particular district, the average score's gone up by so much, or so if you have continuously updated data, you can't do that sort of analysis. So you probably need both. I would say you'd have a live one with the latest data and an annual cut as well.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Let me find out what we're doing.
I think the point is also because Parish Online provides that data down to an individual house, and I think I'm right in saying you can click on that individual house. You may start getting kind of householders saying, "Hey, up, we've actually had an EPC done recently, but it's not showing up on Parish Online." As we get more and more people engaged in using Parish Online, I'm thinking of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Individuals can't engage with Parish Online directly, so we can publish that data because it's only councillors and clerks who can see the data.
But I do think
could become an interactive discussion with the parish or representatives of the parish at events, in terms of, I see your neighbours have X, Y, and Z. I've got an EPC rating of that. Yours is only an F rated. How can we improve it? That type of. I mean, that's the the big advantage, engagement. Now, obviously, that has to be somebody responsible at the parish level for. That engagement has to start off with somebody responsible at the parish level for actually managing and making the householder aware of it. But it could be a fantastic tool to engage people more. As just one example of numerous other ways.
I agree entirely, and I really like your idea, Tristram, of having one layer, which is the current situation, which is updated on a real-time basis. Really, there's no reason not to. And then the idea of the analysis twice a year or 3 times a year, whatever, is also really useful, because you do need to be able to demonstrate whether you're going forwards or backwards in terms of reaching goals and so on.
One thing we didn't discuss enough, I think, at in this hour, is this idea of providing parishes with a methodology and the data associated with it to be able to make a plan. So we found that the thing that the EPCs allow parish to do is to analyze where a house, or where the biggest concentration of houses that need improvement are, overlaying that, for instance, with the energy deprivation data from ONS, being able to eliminate the houses where the assessor said it's not worth investing in that house because it's too fundamentally leaky, it's not working. And the parish can then start to create areas where they can point grants to, and try to get people who will do the work to give a discount for doing a particular street or a particular block of houses. So it allows the parishes to take action. And my experience with parishes is that very often they declare the climate conventions, they've got a net zero date, but they absolutely don't know how to go about making a plan that works. And so what we're trying to do is to provide the data and also the methodology, which needs to be best practice and needs to be provided by somebody like you, Peter. Maybe you could help, somebody who's an expert in the field, say, here's a best practice methodology. Let's embed that in Parish Online under a workspace and provide the data that will allow parish to make a realistic plan.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I'm excuse me, I'm going to have this a short presentation to parishes in a couple of weeks' time. But the next stage is actually almost to be able to provide them guides as to how they might actually want to use it. And we only talk about one data set, which is EPCs, and then another guide is probably required for basic things like putting in where chairs are. I mean, so there's a whole variety of different ways there. And the examples that Chris has given earlier today, I mean, they all need some form of guides with ideally, if it requires data collection, forms to fill them in, even possibly in a Google form format as well, to actually make it very easy for parishes, because the biggest problem, I think, is simply time. And we can't progress things, but in terms of this, but in fact, there, that
is expertise.
Yeah, it does.
In our little parish, we're a tiny parish. We've got plenty of volunteers, but they don't know what to do. The parish council is not able to sort of really direct that effort.
Yeah.
And interestingly, our parish has reverted from trying to do something about insulation and renewable energy to giving messages to people about don't overfill your kettle and make sure you put on a warm jersey and turn the heating down, which is fine. That behavioural thing is important too. But it's a sort of displacement activity of really getting on, in my view, with the important things that you can do at a community level. So solar energy is one. Solar energy potential. How you can persuade people who can't afford the capital costs through an energy company to start moving people towards renewable energy.
Funny enough, the
analysis we've discussed. So there's a sort of list that the great collaboration and we again sort of develop together and try to knock them off one at a time.
yes, funny enough, there was a sort of a hiatus in the Q&A session when I was about to ask Chris if he would go into the presentation of how you're using forms to collect questions, because I think it's very pertinent to this. But then a whole bunch of arms shot up and people wanted questions to ask, so I went with those. But I think the point that Peter is raising is a very valid one, that people do have time to fill in a form. It's self-explanatory and it's very useful. And then as Chris has already offered, you'll do the job of actually putting that onto the map, because the parish clerk doesn't have time. And unless you've got some young enthusiast like Graham will raise his hand here to do it, then it doesn't get done. But I think the whole idea of Chris's form raising system or form information is brilliant. I like that very much.
And the key thing is there's lots of money becoming available, for example, around retrofitting properties. I mean, in Cambridgeshire, for example, there's £11.5 million available. The problem is that is available within certain types of properties. And the biggest problem actually is a skill shortage of actually getting people who qualify to do it. But there's another, I mean, I just wearing my hat as chair of the East Cambridgeshire Climate Action Network, wrote a letter of support for another to the combined authority because they've got money, or hopefully will get money, for the local area retrofit accelerator, LARA, because the MSC Foundation, that's the micro generation scheme foundation, of actually are making money available to encourage the acceleration of retrofit in properties as well. So there's lots of ways.
The local area retrofit, what was it called, Laura?
Yeah, local area retrofit
accelerator.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
created by
of energy production or insulation or what?
Well, retrofitting properties of all types, whether that be for adding heat pumps or insulation or whatever. I'll actually send you the link in a moment to the MSC Foundation and about this project. Just sent it now.
Peter, let me just ask, are you familiar with either Jules Thompson or Chris Poynton?
Oh, Chris, certainly, yeah. I know Chris. Jules, I know the name. I mean, I'm part of the Cambridgeshire Climate Leaders Group, for which Chris tends to lead.
Yeah.
Chris attended an event in Ely, in Cambridgeshire, where I live, last Thursday, because the county council are actually have got funding to develop pilots around community energy. Yet another example of where Parish Online as a mapping tool could be very useful as well.
Well, both Chris and Jules are part of the great collaboration, and it's principally because of their input that our pilot is taking place in East Anglia. So I'll make sure that they've got your name and they're ready to go with you.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
It's
fine.
another question I've got.
Could you just expand a bit more about the project?
Well, great collaboration at a starting point was an idea that came from Herefordshire County Council. And they put some money into building a website that would be particularly useful to anyone in Herefordshire or Hertfordshire, whichever one it is, to work together on climate change. And then they asked us if we would take over the site and expand it to universal cover in the UK, which we're doing. And one of the first things that we wanted to do was to check that we were actually doing something useful for councils. And the pilot study is to go around all of the councils in East Anglia and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're thinking of doing. How does that mesh with what you'd like to have done? And what would be the most useful things for you to be able to interact with? So the pilot is part of making sure we're on the right track and going in the right direction from the point of view of the users. Because obviously the users are the driving force.
Well, Cambridge and Peterborough, of all the areas, would be a great start.
Well, that's why the pilot is there, because it's such a vigorous area for this stuff.
Because Chris and I are actually trying to put together a bid for the combined authority to try to use up some of their underspent. Well, what we hope is underspent funding, around this space of climate change. So, yeah.
Well, one of our major aims, of course, is to advise people on where they can go for money, because it's the first question everyone asks is how can we pay for this? And we see ourselves as having to provide that sort of information.
But if you want a pre-pilot with some questionnaires, as I say, the group of people I'm talking to on the 15th of May, we can do that. Just come back to me.
Okay, well, I will put you in touch closely with Chris. And here's sorry, Stuart is ready to say.
Right, just before we pack up, can I just ask Peter, has the methodology for calculating the EPC changed over time?
Yes, the methodology generally changes over time. The methodology, but the methodology, quite honestly, is out of date now. The methodology should have been changed on the 1st of April. This is domestic properties I'm talking about. It has now been delayed until maybe mid or late summer, when the next methodology will come into place.
If we were to look at how things have been changing over time, the scores wouldn't be the same from one year to the next.
If you go down to the fine grain of the EPC, they would possibly be different. If you're looking at just the kind of rating EPC, A, B, C, D, E, or F or G, that wouldn't change too much. It would, but you can't easily compare. I always say to people, you can't compare an EPC of 8 or 9 or 7 years ago with one which I'm doing today, for example, because the methodology has been refined and it is changing. And as I say, it's quite a major change going to happen. We hope maybe the election will get in the way. I don't know. The end of this year. Yet they are working on an even further methodology, because it's based upon the standard assessment procedure, and an EPC is based upon a reduced version of that. So the latest one has been delayed, but they're working on the SAP, which could be implemented again, refined again in 2025 or 2026. I did ask the question, why don't you constitute them together to one group? The trouble is, government are not moving very fast on this at the present moment.
Peter, can I ask you a question quickly? Have you got access to Parish Online for your East Cambridge Climate Action Network?
Sorry, I've
No,
got
I
to go.
don't at the moment, Sue, but I would
Thanks,
like to
Graham.
connect.
Yes, Stuart, lovely to see you.
Right.
Chris, thank you, Phil. Because Peter, if you want to make plans and draw maps for your action network area, you should do that in Parish Online as well. And if your people in the network have got Parish Online, we can give you a license, or we can arrange, we can negotiate a price for you to have a license. And if you started building maps, you could encourage people to,
I mean,
to sign on.
I understand. I think
when
I think Chris has told me previously when he does presentations, and in fact, I think there were 16 parishes in East Cambridgeshire who had either shown an interest or were actively using it, but I don't know anything more than that. They may try this out.
If you want to say at your meeting in a couple of weeks that that if everybody got Parish Online, you could have one too. You could be a group in East Cambridgeshire. It would make your work miles more efficient, and we could negotiate a very good price for that to happen.
Yeah, the problem is having to reorganise the network, and we don't have any money at the moment too. But I'd love to have a trial.
Yeah, well, do that. But people should be aware at a parish level, it pays for itself in efficiency and effort.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm convinced. I think that it's just it's the time is needed to get people involved. I mean, I've got one parish where they're hosting the event actually in Burwell. There's a guy there's really keen. You've got to get the really keen, enthusiastic people in a parish to actually drive it forward with the parish. With the parish council as well. That's my thinking, and I'm sure that's probably the same for everywhere. But it's getting that momentum going.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
But yeah, I mean, how do we progress this, Graham? Then.
Well, I'll put Jules and well, Chris already knows you, but in direct touch over the pilot, and we go from there. And if I can be of any help to you with your presentation. Because my company is officially the Parish Online trainer. So we train people all the time in using it. And so anything I can do to help you increase your wow factor to your audience, then let's work together on that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I've taken some screenshots today, which is great on the climate assets. I've got in effect probably a 5-6 minute presentation I can do to start off with. Then I have a bit more time later on in the day, about 20 minutes. But what my plan would be that we have in a month later or so, we'll have a more detailed presentation of people who are really keen and interested in it. But there is interest growing there. It's just
But at the end of each of these sessions, we send out to all the participants and the group of people who couldn't make it a copy of the video, but also the presentation. So I'm hoping I can persuade Chris to send me a copy of his presentation.
I'm sure he will.
That's great. Yeah.
And
I mean, I do come to quite a few of these, but the last couple of weeks I've actually either forgotten or actually been away and not been able to do it online. So you have seen my face a few times.
Yep. Well, it's good to see you today, and we'll catch up with you in the next day or so.
That'd be brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time, Peter. Christian, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christian, can I just ask again? Remind me what you do.
I'm the chairman of Geoxphere and founder. So I've been doing Parish Online now for since the very beginning.
Okay.
But I'm not a GIS technology person. My interest is really in this creating applications in Parish Online with guidance so that people can do their work better.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Did you do the Parish Online presentation for the Great Collaboration a few months ago?
I did one, I think, at the very early days.
You and I did it together. So I made the presentation, Peter, and then Christian came in to talk about the corridors and the woodland opportunities.
I mean, I've had 4 presentations so far, I think. So I just want to move on it now.
All right.
That's the
Good.
key.
Very good to meet you again.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care,
Right.
both. Bye-bye.